Berkowitz, Director of the Third Republic, to give us a view. I mean, what is the stance of the Third Republic, and where do you stand as the IEC goes to try and obtain this deferral?
Francis, I think I'd start out by saying there doesn't seem to be an easy win in sight. I think Mr. Shiburi has outlined some of the issues. I've been looking at some of the discussions this week by the finest legal minds in the country, and there is no clear consensus on what will happen or what should happen. There does seem to be a concern, a very real concern, based on the precedent and the legal precedent and the outlook of the Constitutional Court, that the court would not be comfortable in making new legislation, in issuing a proclamation with such potentially wide-ranging and sweeping implications, and may ask the national legislature to create a new law to accommodate this. But yeah. I think the bottom line is everything has been left late. As a country, and all our institutions, including the IEC, are underprepared. And as Mr. Shiburi said, we haven't had even one voter registration weekend, and it doesn't look like elections, should they take place in October, will be free and fair.
Yeah, and promulgating a whole new law, I mean, surely that'll take a lot of time, so we're stuck with the date. So you're saying the hard decision is for the Constitutional Court right now, and of course we have our own legal standards, but this has been done internationally, has it not?
I'm not sure that there has been any similar precedent in the last 18 months. It's true that we didn't have the Delta variant for elections which have been held over the last year and a half. There have been delays and deferrals in other countries. One of the most the biggest examples that comes to mind is that Ethiopia postponed their elections last year. I think the concern is that our institutions have set a very high standard. The IEC, the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court will be reluctant to issue any proclamation that might have implications down the line. It is a serious thing to delay an election so late. Even if we were to delay the election to February, there's still so many things that aren't in place, including registering a number of voters. The IEC's press release this morning stated that some 18,000 voters have been registered online electronically. Now that's a fraction of the hundreds of thousands of voters that are normally registered in the voter registration cycle before a general election. As Mr. Shiburi said, the impact will be felt disproportionately by poor South Africans, by those who don't have internet connection. It creates two different standards for different groups of people in South Africa. The under 35s are traditionally under-registered compared to other age cohorts. It will be even worse this time. And I think we run a very real risk of voter turnout falling even further, being even lower than in 2019. In 2019, less than half of all the over 18-year-olds in the country, those who potentially were eligible to vote, actually voted, and the number will probably fall even further this time.
But does that number go up if there is a deferral? So if we are given until February next year, then the IEC will have time to mobilize those young, hopefully vaccinated people?
Yeah, I think if the deferral were to come soon, in an expeditious way, which seems more and more unlikely, given all the legal hoops that need to be jumped through at this point. If that were to happen, the IEC could have a full voter registration weekend, and the numbers would go up. But we traditionally have 2 voter registration weekends. Even as recently as a week or 2 ago, it was already a risk, and it was already it was already, as Mr. Shiburi said, looking to be less free and a less fair election than previous elections where we'd had 2 registration
Okay,
weekends.
but finally, if you're saying this is unlikely, that the court will want to intervene, unlikely that the date can be changed, so are we looking at an October election, but people will feel unsafe, especially after the Moseneke report, there could be mayhem. Is that what you're saying is a possibility here?
I don't know if I'd go so far, Francis, as to say mayhem. There are very real
unhappiness about it.
There are very real health risks. We're not out of the third wave. Our test positivity rate is not as low as we would like it in order for it to be safe. And I think apart from the health risks, which are very real, we have a certain number of realities. Most political parties have not had a chance to campaign as they would traditionally. If you look at the streets, there are very few election posters up. That is another concern in terms of the freeness and the fairness of the election, whether the parties have a time to campaign, to reach out, to present their cases to voters. Voters will be reticent and reluctant to go out and to vote, as you've said, because of the very real health risks. There is general, I hope I'm not projecting, but there's general discontent and apathy with political governance in the country, especially over the last few months. And all of those things are very, very likely to combine and result in low voter turnout, probably an historically low voter turnout, and that itself will have implications for how democratic, how free and fair the election's going to be.
All right, thank you very much. Paul Berkowitz, Director of the Third Republic, saying there's a problem here if the courts don't agree and they may not want to issue any sort of deferral. As you can see on the screen, we will be speaking to a constitutional law expert about this very topic after the break.